High Priestess. So, today I'd like to talk to you about the ways in which spirituality, which is fundamentally a search for greater truth and alignment with the divine, how that same spirituality can actually become a safe haven for delusion. Now, this is a very important topic at this time, just because, and I'm not the only person who's seen it. I've been seeing this happening for a few years now, but more and more people are realizing that rather than using the spiritual path as a means to find truth, people arm themselves with the language of spirituality to avoid truth. And that's the trend these days. Of course, we have concepts like spiritual bypassing that help people identify this, but it takes a certain level of awareness to see those behaviors in oneself and to see them when other people around you do the same. So you can think of this particular discussion as a way of helping you understand, that line in the sand between a spiritual path or a spiritual seeker who's actually wanting to find greater understanding and those who are hiding behind the vast field that is spirituality to justify whatever they want to justify. Unfortunately, and again, I am not the first person to have said this, a lot of people have been seeing this, especially those who have been in the field for a few years, like I have. There is this intersection between privilege, a desire to disassociate from reality, a desire to ignore whatever it is that makes you feel uncomfortable, and they intersect together in ways that actually reinforce hierarchies and inequalities of power on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. And in these cases, we actually see how spirituality gets a bad rep. As you know, and as some of you have seen in the comments in my article on it, people have not been that happy about me celebrating what's been happening in the United States. And you know what? It's up to them. That's their choice. Everyone has the right to have their political preferences. Hopefully, we can agree on fundamental standards of moral decency. But beyond that, people have the right to feel what they want to feel. But what I noticed there was the same kind of toxic, zealot like energy, which is ultimately what made me realize Facebook was not the right platform for me, because the moment I shone there, the moment I said something there, too many people came to the attack. And it's not like I say anything that's particularly mean or particularly, you know, uh, radical. In fact, most of the time, I just tell you things that are commonsensical. That's about it. But that can be deeply triggering. And honestly, I had to walk away from a community that was anywhere between, depending on the way you look at it, 22 to 27,000 people. And it wasn't an easy decision. But I realized that that particular platform was bringing out the crazy. And when I saw that happen in a very small way on in this YouTube space yesterday, I realized, yeah, switching the platform was not a way to get away from those dynamics. You're just going to have to face it anyway. And I did. Those of you who remember me from my Facebook days know just how much energy I put into each person who spoke to me and how much time I spent trying to argue, and in a sense, argue as in deliberate, trying to see different points of view, trying to be civil, even when horrendous words were in cases like this, simply does not work. In that case, you may ask, well, why do this video? So I've been thinking, I actually wrote the text yesterday, but Spirit said, wait a day, it'll be clear. And I did, and I can see why. Because energetically, I've been feeling that same push, that same zealot like energy that is so threatened by anything that seeks to, just by being itself is taken as an invalidation of the other's existence. And I've been feeling that energy so strongly. And those of you in my Tier 23 program, you know that's exactly what I've said is going to come up for November the 11th, November the 12th, November the 15th, and so on and so forth. We're seeing a very strong activation of a body called Borasisi, Borasisi, which I associate with the false light. And we see that coming through very, very strongly at this time. So what does a person do when they're confronted by someone who uses a spiritual language and their interpretation of reality is so far off base, just observed basic facts? What do you do in that case? What is the most compassionate thing to do? What is the most aligned thing to do? These are some of the questions which I felt were useful ones to raise, because I know I did that for 7 years. So I kind of have a handle on that after much learning curve. But even then, there's always scope to learn, because I see a lot of people around me who haven't, done that kind of community building exercise, and who are kind of shocked by what they're feeling and shocked by what they're seeing, and they don't know how to react. So this is, at the end of the day, everyone has the right to believe what they want. But you got to understand that what is truth to one person can be a lie to another person. And when we come at it from a space of spirituality, we have to accept that no matter how sick or twisted or distorted that person's understanding of truth is in our eyes, that's going to be their truth. Now, on the spiritual path, now politics is, things get a little bit messy when we look at the political domain. And it needs to get messier because it's the age we're in. We have to engage. But let's start at the spiritual level first. So when we encounter someone who seems to be diametrically opposed to us, at a fundamental level, acceptance is key. Now, acceptance does not mean that you accept whatever they're saying. Let's say you meet someone who believes that it's perfectly okay to eat children. And, a lot of you will be like, oh my God. But yeah, let's say you meet someone like that. At a spiritual level, one of the hardest things you're going to have to do in an extreme example like that is to respect the fact that that person can have the right to believe that. And that is that fundamental acceptance that spiritual teachers and spiritualists are talking about. So, in this whole new age diluted miasma that is, pop spirituality, that idea and understanding of acceptance is forgotten. And instead of talking about that, what they then talk about is an uncritical idea of saying it's okay, every path is okay. The two are not the same thing. One is a recognition that each individual being is some aspect of creation and is going to have their particular response to that aspect of creation. That doesn't mean you need to agree with them. That doesn't mean you need to stand by and let them do what they want to do. But the acceptance comes at a much deeper energetic level when you see that that person is their own space and they are doing what they think is in alignment with whatever path they're on. That is not the same, however, as saying that, oh, it's your path. Okay, I'm going to stand away now. I'm going to be apathetic. I'm just going to let you do what you want because that's spiritual bullshit. Someone was trying to explain this to me in his own way on my page yesterday, citing Hinduism and the concept of Maya and knowledge and how we see compassion and everything. And I'm like, okay, honey, that's fine. But within the same philosophy, and I use that as a reference point, not because I pedestalize Hinduism, but because it was the reference point of that conversation, I said, yeah, sure, that's great. But there's also a concept called dharma. And if you just look at all knowledge as equal, and therefore by accepting that position, you are then freed from the burden to act when you see injustice happening before you, you better go back and look at scripture, because that is not what that says. So when you have a fundamental acceptance that that person in front of you, no matter how monstrous you think they are, has that fundamental right to believe whatever they want to believe, that shifts your approach. That completely shifts your approach. What I was doing early on when I was engaging, like I said, tens of thousands of people, especially on Facebook, I couldn't get it. In my mind, I just could not understand how can people believe all of this stuff? This is the facts. These are the understandings. Please, please read and educate yourself, because I wasn't accepting the fact that they were on their journey. But that's just phase one. And the moment I came to understand and accept that, my life became a lot less complicated. Step two, from that space of acceptance, from that space of understanding why a person may have the beliefs that they have, that's when you actually decide what your response to this will be at the level of action. Now, apathy is just one response. The way people talk about spirituality is like you got to accept everything, you got to let everything be. That is, and a bit of reductionistic and absurdist extrapolation of the argument, but it comes down to that. But at the end of the day, when we are able to look at a situation from that space of understanding, the way we move. Am I back yet? You know what it's like, and I'm back at 11:11. Anytime there's an important video, stuff like this. Can everyone hear me? Are we back? Is everyone back yet? Hello, hello. Okay, I see the numbers dropping. Maybe it means no one can hear me. Let me try again. Okay. Come on. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me? Somebody say something, because I'm not getting any of your messages. Hello? It says it's live. Okay, I'm just going to keep talking and hopefully you'll see me. I'm also just going to check this on my laptop to make sure that I'm not just talking into the void here. So, hang on. Okay, it's buffering. Fun times. Damn it, I may have to restart this one. Come on. Error occurred. Please try again later. Oh, man. Is this here? Yes, you can hear me. I'm so happy. Okay, so as I was saying, okay, as I was saying, thank you. Now, going back to the example that I was talking about, let's say you're meeting someone with such extreme views on how they want to treat children. At that point, you're not going to say, oh, love and light to you. You've got the right to your own beliefs. Bye. You're going to say, you touch a child in front of me. I get what you're about, but that's still not going to happen on my watch. That's the difference between spiritual apathy and actually showing up in a way that allows you to meet spirit with action in the here and now. Now, sometimes, so that's a very extreme example. And in those cases, I hope most of you will do the right thing, if not all. So let's turn to an example that's, less extreme. Let's say you meet someone with a political view that's different from yours. But, and sometimes you can just shake hands and say, we agree to disagree and walk off. And sometimes the difference in views is a little bit starker than that. Sometimes one person may see certain people as human beings and other people as animals. What are you going to do about that? They may not directly seek to cause harm in a very obvious way, but in an indirect way, they may actually agree to policies that do in the long term. So what do you do in a situation like that? You can't just stand there and go, I'm not going to let you have your beliefs. That doesn't work. So first things first, identify if they're coming from a place of spiritual awakening and a spiritual journey that has a sense of reason or not. And that's where we come to when spirituality becomes a safe haven for delusion. Now, like I said, when you really look at things, and the only reason why I think I have some understanding of what happens in the universe is because I keep questioning things. I'm like, is this right? Is that interpretation okay? Has that shifted? Has that changed? And I'm not invested in holding on to anything and saying, this is it. But when you meet people who are saturated with this false light energy, who have an absolute faith and belief that everything they or their fearless leaders say is true and correct, the biggest difference between them and a spiritual seeker who simply has a different view is that they will try to push their energy into you. Much like missionaries claiming, going to indigenous people and telling them, you're going to die and go to hell if you don't adopt, Christianity. Mind you, I happen to absolutely adore Yeshua and many biblical figures, but I'm still not going to accept the way that as a system of political control has actually harmed many indigenous cultures. But that's a side point. Now, what I would say in this case is that you really got to think about whether or not that person can be engaged with. When someone sees your disagreement as a direct attack on their existence, and then they must somehow, convince you that they are the truth, they are the light, you gotta follow them, otherwise you'll never know anything, that is your sign to walk away. Now, as someone who has had to deal with from my teenage years, I've had to unfortunately been in the situation of caring for someone older who suffered from severe mental illness. And as someone who's seen that situation for many, for quite a few years, I can tell you that compassion will not cure crazy. You can ask anyone who has had to do that for a family member. You can ask anyone who has ever worked in, an insane asylum or simply a facility for people who are dealing with mental health issues. Doesn't have to be that extreme. You do not soften or change a person by being nice to them. You may simply just end up enabling someone to hold a very dangerous view. So, this other, I would say new age myth about, but you've got to be nice to them and you've got to actually show them kindness and they'll change, does not work. That's point number two. So, when you meet someone who is trying to push this energy in a very violent way to you, and it could be physically, it could be energetically, they could be doing prayers and stuff that you're not even interested in or have not given consent to, or they could rhetorically be trying to, constantly put you in a box because they can't take the idea that their reality might not exactly, bear scrutiny. That is literally the time where I would say walk away because your energy is being wasted. Compassion does not cure crazy. Engagement does not cure crazy. Now, legitimate approaches to dealing with mental health issues exist, but when you are dealing with people who are hiding behind the rhetoric of spirituality, they can justify anything under the guise of this was my intuition, I channeled this, I am filled with some divine light that told me this was so. And that's where things get really iffy because some people who really do the hard work use the same language. Which brings me to point number three. Point number three is remember, just because you call yourself spiritual doesn't mean that you're a good person. You can say God is spirit, goddess, creator, creatrix is spirit. You can say angels are spirits, fairies are spirits. You can also say demons are spirits and hungry ghosts are spirits. And all kinds of things are spirits. The word spiritual itself is morally ambiguous. And this is where people get very confused because of the way it's been marketed uncritically as a concept. The thing that really helps a person see, if their spirituality has led them to a part of delusion or not, is whether or not that spirituality helps them engage with the here and now and to respond to the here and now in a way that does not harm themselves and ideally does not harm others. Now, this is a concept where a lot of people in that privilege bubble can kind of twist it about and say, but I'm not doing anything that's going to harm me. I must be okay. And that's exactly when you got to ask yourself, why is your spirituality so self-serving? But these are questions that only people who are on that road can ask themselves. They are not going to take that energy from anyone else, even if they're holding the mirror up saying, please look. It doesn't work. So these are just some of the key ideas and dynamics that I have found over the years. That had someone told me this a couple of years back, I would have saved myself a lot of energy and a lot of time. At the end of the day, your journey with spirit is one which ultimately asks you to sit with what is the most fundamental and aligned energy, aligned flow of consciousness in the universe. And when you sit in that flow, I think it's almost impossible for you to actually want to go out there and either actively do harm or stay silent when harm is being done to an innocent. I think any spiritual tradition, any spiritual path, any religious path, at the end of the day, will boil down to that bare minimum. And when you are dealing with people who do not even respect that bare minimum, it's not spirituality anymore. It's something wearing the dead corpse of spirituality. And it's up to you if you want to treat it as such. But, that's a harsh comparison, but it's also a very true one. Like I said, the word spirit can mean two many things to be absolutely blasé about it. So let's now look at the comments and let's now look at some questions to see what's come up. Hang on. Hold up, hold up, hold up. There's a lot of confirmation. We can hear you, we can hear you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, so scrolling as high as I can. Okay, I'm just looking for the key questions around this. Um, let's see. Buffering. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay, hang on, hang on. I'm looking for the questions. Um, okay. Oh, here we go. Oh. Now, Loza asks, do we have access to knowledge of our ancestors in the spiritual realm and their learned lessons? Um, you have definitely got access to that, but this is the thing, our ancestors are also spirits and they are not purely benevolent. There are some ancestors who are very, 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 let's just say they did shit that they shouldn't have done and that screwed up their descendants and their lineages for a long, long, long time. And then there are some ancestors who are a little bit wiser about things. So yes, you can access those energies, but you can also access the other ones. Um, okay, VB says, in terms of political views, I really got taken to task by a friend who is a supporter of the current government, VB's in India, and just to make sure that his views were not heard. Oh, you might want to think about whether this person is is your friend or not. Let's see. Batwoman of Gotham says, compassion will not cure crazy. Another coffee mug, please. I'm making a list of this. I might just open a coffee mug store and make my money that way. Here we go. Gertie asks, could part of the activation of Bairavee also be members of the collective being confronted with false narratives of groups they have followed up till now? Absolutely, yes. This is a time where people can either fall deeper into the false light or they can actually take a stand and challenge it. Now, the thing you got to understand is that everything that people need to challenge these narratives are already out there. So if someone is actually looking for resources to help them challenge themselves and to evolve, they have it at the click of a fingertip. So you don't actually need to be the person who gets yourself ground up or used as a projection screen or punching bag to get them to that level if they're actually interested in doing it. I mean, I would also say that the activation of Bairavee, especially with the new moon coming up, is going to be one which more likely than not is probably going to push more people into the collective lemming-like jumping off a cliff vibration. And there's really not much you can do there. You standing there and saying, hey, lemmings, don't jump, is not actually going to stop them. You just kind of have to find high ground. Sometimes there's literally nothing you can do. And that too is a spiritual lesson. Sometimes you just cannot solve a situation. Now let's see what comes up next. Okay. Candy says, it's so tough when my very existence is perceived as a threat to another's existence. I hear you. I completely understand. And I understand. So, okay. Adharas, how does one become aware of their tendency to bypass in time? Really, it's about taking a step back to your emotional responses. If you're being defensive, sometimes that's legitimate. If someone has crossed the line, you say, hey, no. And sometimes, you react too quickly and you want to dismiss what the other person is saying because you're afraid of being wrong. So you're only going to be able to discern when you take a step back almost inside yourself and begin to play the observer role. That's, again, something very foundational that anyone who's truly interested in spirituality needs to address at some part of their journey. Unfortunately, we have too many people who want to, claim themselves as ascended masters and pure beings without the basics. Okay. VB says, how do we encounter people who enforce their belief systems on us, especially if it comes from close ones? That is very hard. If someone loves you enough, you're going to have to figure out a safe boundary between the two of you so that you can actually have your beliefs and in coexistence with another person's beliefs. You have to look at what actually brings you together rather than what divides you. Now, when that person refuses to do that exercise, maybe they're not as close as you thought. Let's see. What? Come on, phone. What are you doing? Um, here we go. Please elaborate on 1111. What's the best way to spend it? Honestly, sit with spirit and see what comes. That's generally my answer to a lot of things. Della says, for me, it's my family members. I block them on FB now when they want to call and see if I'm okay. I'm fine, but they won't leave me alone. Mom sends scriptures in emails. I know exactly what that's like. Fana Fraser says, how would you name your processing with spirituality? I wouldn't. Robert Lamont says, what do you think of the concept of the false light being an energetic aspect of one's own ego? I would say that's a very, very clever false light rhetorical trap. False light energy is very distinct from a human's energy. You can almost see it as something that is a separate layer to that person's own consciousness. But again, to be able to discern between the two, you need to have a very clear understanding of how to see energetic frequencies in multidimensional states. So let's see. Norris Brooks says, this is a time when veil between the spiritual and 3D, which means we can manifest as we please. No. The new moon in Scorpio coming up has 3 intersecting yods. That's why you need to join the Tier 23 program if you want all of this detail in advance. I can't do everything everywhere. And I need to eat, so please join the program if you want more details. Now, this is not a time for manifesting as you please because it's a very high point of volatility. The butterfly effect is extraordinarily strong, so if you think you're trying to manifest something, something completely different might happen. Adar says, do you think at present spirituality has been commodified as a feel-good lifestyle choice? Absolutely, yes. Other goes on to say, because I don't see anyone talking about the basics beyond meditate, think good thoughts, etc. Yes, that's easily commodified. Cognitive tribalist asks, what is your title meant? Very hard to describe. Why are you asking? Let's see. Jessica says, very unusual. Hang on. Okay. Do we pull such things? I don't know if this, the way the law of attraction has been explained tends to be very victim blaming. The thing is, we are living in, it's kind of like when you're living in an energetic bubble and one current influences another current. You're in a state of interaction and experience. Your chart can, of course, draw certain things to you, but that's not necessarily who you are. And proper spiritual practice can actually help you break certain patterns of compulsion and drawing. So it's not necessarily you, it's probably just old karma. So let's see. Dakini asks, what if you have taken that step inward for so long that you never stand up for yourself, never set boundaries at age of 52, still suffering? Then it's up to you to decide when you want to take that step, love. It's never ever too late to be true to who you are. Vivi says, do you think that some religious leaders are mixing spirituality and religion and misguiding people? I think all of them do. Cognitive Tribalist says, I like it. It was, honestly, my title was given to me by a very amazing, I would say, certainly on the ascension path soul. It wasn't something I chose, it was given to me. So let's see. Angela asks, could you share more about what grand water trines versus Earth are, etc., and what a Star of David is in the astrological sense? That might be a question for a different time. But okay, I see who's asking me this question. All right. Now, Angela is a member of Tier 23, and this is something that it was referenced, so I'm going to go and talk about it briefly. Generally speaking, a grand water trine is when there's an intensification of emotional, psychic, ancestral energy. Very, very, very briefly. A grand earth trine is one that focuses more so on the material manifestation and experience of that energy in a more embodied, solid form. When the two come together, it forms a grand sextile. A grand sextile is a master manifestation portal, and it is something that asks you to effectively bridge your synthesize your emotional body, your psychic alignment, your intuitive state with the reality that you want to see. Long story short. Okay. Batwoman says tier 23 is the best subscription I've ever had. Thank you so much. Crystalline Crow says crow signed. Okay. Biracial conjure witch, just because I don't know how to pronounce the other words and I don't want to disrespect what you're saying. How do I discern so-called spiritual person online and real life? How do I keep on focus and stick to a spiritual system? People whom I would stay away from are usually trying to get me to surrender my autonomy and my freedom to choose and freedom to think and freedom to ask questions. And in a way that allows me to go deeper into a subject. When someone is trying to put me in a box and says, you got to listen to me and that's it and nothing else can happen, that's usually when I go, no, thank you, goodbye. Most of the spiritualists that I work with as colleagues or people who facilitate for me, whom I usually refer to for my clients when they have specialist cases, are people who I wasn't looking for. They kind of found me. And usually that's what I would advise on the spiritual journey. Let the journey find you. When you are trying to look, when you are trying to find things, generally it's your ego mind that's doing the finding. But when you actually just allow it to come to you, that's different. Like a lot of people, they have no idea how they found me. And I don't even remember looking for you on YouTube. How did I find your channel? And that's how it happens. So don't look would be my answer, and let it come to you. How do you keep on focus and stick to a spiritual system? Good question. The thing about spirituality is that it is, at the end of the day, something that's all encompassing. So, it is a Western idea to say that spirituality is this little box or this little thing that we do. Everything that we do is an expression of spirit. So it's all about the way you think about it. Um, that woman asks, is there an asteroid that is the opposite of Veracity, and where would that be in the universe orbit? Something that actually gives you truth. Logos is one. Neptune retrograde is a really good one, though, for that. Jennifer Wilson asks, do yods get triggered both at the apex and at the sextile midpoint? Yes. Cognitive Tribalist asks, what is your religion? I don't have one. Angela says, oh my God, lol, now I understand. Thank you. Nacha Libre says, yes, tier 23 is the best. Thank you. Okay, so, okay. Can we join tier 23 mid-month? Yes, you can. You just need to go to my website, www.theskypriestess.as.me, and you'll find where you can subscribe. You can join it mid-month. Like I think this installation alone was 6,000 words. You get hours and hours of content a month. Let's see. Loza says, if this year is Hunter Stalker, I resonate this year with Artemisia in focusing on what to do. Is this delusion? I can understand that. Sometimes at a 3D level, we need to focus what is right in front of us. At a spiritual level, we just need to allow and watch the energy that moves through. And that can be very difficult when you have very immediate, 3D situations right in front of you. Cognitive Tribalist says, you don't have religion, I send you hearts. So thank you very much. That being said, though, I have gone quite a few places on this planet, gone to some extremely sacred sites, some of which were corrupted, some of which were okay, probably connected with different energies of different religions across the planet, some of which are very old. But that's probably why I don't follow one. I just look at them, and I kind of also look at the cracks in the religion, and I also kind of just do this and go, seriously? That's why they tend to leave me alone. I mean, if you ask me who I actually like in terms of a spiritual being, I don't know why, but when I was on my pilgrimage in America, I encountered the Virgin of Guadalupe. And there's something about her that I really, really like. And, it's probably because of that meeting of two cultures. She's an energy that I resonate with very strongly, and There's something that I find deeply sacred about her. And there are other figures that I do like, but I would say the Virgin of Guadalupe is probably my favorite. Let's see. Alejandra says tier 23 totally invaluable. Thank you. Alejandra is a master facilitator. I don't say that word lightly. She is amazing, absolutely amazing. And she's also one of my best friends. So thank you so much. Let's see. Jessica says, Age of Aquarius, no religion of yesterday. Yep, that's pretty much it. The further you go at the spiritual level, the more you look at what you pedestalize as God and you go high, and the relationship changes. Alejandra says, Bestie love. She has 5 cats and 3 babies. I'm amazed. Okay, I'm amazed. Babies ask, what are your views on ayahuasca? Ayahuasca as a substance, and I must be remembering this from a while back. Ayahuasca as a substance can be incredibly pure and sacred, but I think context really matters. Who is administering it matters. If you transplant it from the middle of a jungle after a person has had to go through a certain rite of initiation and you put it in a city which is already surrounded by all kinds of bullshit, you're going to have a very different response with it. So it is deeply sacred, but you kind of have to view it in situ with a facilitator who is not looking at it as a commercial means to an end. Um, let's see. Lantern Hill Morgans, who has an extremely cool cat. I don't resonate with institutional religion either, and you must have had some amazing experiences. Yep, yep, you could say that. um, it's certainly been eye-opening. But it is what it is. But hopefully, this discussion has given all of you a few more tools to help you understand what happens when people are using the spiritual surge to go do something else. It doesn't matter who it is. Even if it's someone you consider crazy, even if it's someone you consider a guru, if it's someone you consider an authority, the moment someone is using the power of belief to try and shape your perception of the divine, pull back, go somewhere else. Because at the end of the day, we're moving into a space where freedom of the soul to be that which it is the rule of the day. That doesn't mean that people just go around doing what the hell they want and have no accountability. That's not what I mean. It means that we have to actually trust ourselves to be that which we are and respond accordingly. There is also no room for delusion and apathy without a great cost. Having said that, my cat has just epically jumped down the fridge. She's saying, Mommy, you have talked too much today. I demand your attention. And now I shall go and attend to my little darling. So take care. Very many blessings. Very good conversation today. Lots and lots and lots of love to everyone. And yeah, ciao ciao for now. Bye.